Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Visual Insights. Thank you for all the guys who've been coming to part of them in the past, as well as all the new people that are coming to visit for the first time. My name's Ryan Harrison. For those who don't know me, I've been training visual performance skills for the last 20 years. I learned everything from my father, Dr. Bill Harrison, who started in 1970, working with professional athletes and amateur athletes on the visual side of the game. I've been lucky enough to work with, I don't know, about 12 to 15 major league teams, work with collegiate baseball, collegiate softball, NHL hockey players, tennis players, race car drivers, golfers, you name the sport. I've probably dipped in it and understood the visual performance that applies to those sports. And today's guest, what we have is Reggie Smith. Reggie goes back with my dad. We'll talk about in a little bit of this episode, but Reggie and I recently spent a trip together in Cuba doing a seminar down in Cuba, which we had a great time. And so I'm glad to have Reggie on our show. And Reggie, welcome to the show. And Reggie, give us a little background of you. Obviously I know your background, but maybe for people who don't know you, give us a little background of your playing days to today.
Oh, well, first let me say thank you, Brian, for having me on the show. A little bit of background on myself. I was fortunate enough to play 17 years in the major leagues and 2 additional years in Japan, and a total of 22 years. And as a result of the time that I spent playing, and fortunately to real early in my career, be exposed to one of the greatest hitters ever in baseball, and Ted Williams, and working with him as a young player to pique that curiosity that I had of how to do things. And it made him interested in me because in wanting to learn as much as I possibly could about hitting and the mechanics of hitting. He put me on that track, and he challenged me to learn things on my own. Taking that and encouraged me into my career, and having always had that curiosity and that interest. I got into coaching and teaching hitting, and I was fortunate enough at the time after my career ended, after having spent some time doing some lab work and some video work on the kind of thing, to have an opportunity to become a batting coach with the Dodgers. And what that led to, trying to improve the overall averages of players to come into contact with people in science. We didn't include your dad on the vision side, having been introduced by Steve Smith. Your dad had worked with, I guess, security, Kansas Academy. And
Reggie.
Bill. Yes.
I think we're having a little volume issue. I don't know if it was just me or not, but it was kind of coming and going on there. Can everyone hear him okay? No? Okay, yeah, you're having a little, it was a little like internet flex on there. So maybe, let's see how we go now.
Yeah, because even you, that I can see there's a delay. But anyway, to make a long story short, I met your dad as the hitting coordinator with the Dodgers, and that session there and working with him gave me an opportunity, the introduction to getting visual testing equipment.
Hey, Reggie.
Yes.
Reggie, we are having sound issues with you. I don't know if it's your internet or what.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, as it was, I met your dad being the hitting coordinator with the Dodgers, and gave me an opportunity to take that farther in meeting with the people from the visual science was to be able to effectively hit a baseball.
Yeah, I think we lost a little bit, but let's see if we get better. If not, we'll reconnect you or something to see there. So I know a little bit from my dad that you guys going back to the Dodgers. He and Sid Thrift working with some great players down in Albuquerque, I believe it was, and prior to that, your career, obviously you had a very phenomenal career as a player, and were very effective, but you probably you had some downfalls probably within your career. It wasn't always hitting the ball great and always getting on base. When you were struggling, what were some of the things that were going on when you were struggling?
Well, usually the one common denominator that all hitters say, I'm not seeing the ball well. And when you're not seeing, determine what it was it a mechanical problem or was it a mental problem, from an anxiety standpoint. And probably it was a combination of the two, because the one thing that that I did do, I prided myself on my ability to see the baseball and could recognize the pitches. So what I found that with me, it was fatigue. And one of the things that happens when you're on base a lot, when you're hitting 300, you're on base a lot. And that part of it meant that I needed to focus and concentrate a little bit more on getting rest. But aside from injuries, other than that, it was mainly I didn't see the ball well and what caused it.
Reggie, we're getting about 50% of what you're saying here. You want to? So should we have you try to log off and log back on and see if the connection gets better?
Yes, I'll do that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. It happens on there. Okay, guys, if you guys can be a little patient with us, we'll try to get Reggie back on in just a second. In the meantime, if you do have questions, please you can write them in the chat room, and we can bring them back out. And once he gets back on, he might be readjusting himself. Let's see. You good, Reggie?
I'm gonna have to start all over again because I don't know if it's from the heat. I'm outside.
Yeah, we can hear you now, so maybe that'll work. You there?
Hold on, I'm
Technical difficulties happen sometimes.
having a problem. I'm using my Mac and I'm having trouble with the cursor.
Yeah, you might need to get closer to where your Wi-Fi is, your router on there.
Yeah, this is pretty much where I do all of my Zoom calls. I'm in the same spot, and just let me move around here, see if that helps.
Yeah. There we go. Let's try from there, and we'll see what happens. Okay. So going back there, you were talking about when you were struggling, you didn't see the ball well, and when you were going good, you were seeing the ball good, and then you started talking about something about when you got on base a lot, and we lost you a little bit on there.
One of the things that I found with a lot of hitters and with myself, fatigue. You get a little tired, and get a little mentally tired too, and trying to focus and stay focused for as long as you need to. And that was the thing that felt worked with me, because it was important to not accept the fact that I was in a slump. I would just say I'm not hitting the ball well, and it became a matter of what I needed to do to correct that. And you can correct those things in your practice, but then, fighting to see the baseball, and you often hear guys say, well, the ball gets awfully small sometimes. Yeah. And that was the case. And then later on, after I got in the lab, one of the causes was Yeah, I was moving a little bit too much.
Yeah, it's funny. You say a lot of things. Obviously, as you know, players say the same thing, and fatigue is such a big factor, especially in long season. The travel, drinking, whatever, family issues.
Yeah.
There's so many things that can cause fatigue, and when you have fatigue and vision, you make poor decisions basically, and you start chasing and you start going. And at the same time, you kind of mentioned this, everyone tends to want to go back to the mechanical fix. Like, what's wrong with my swing?
Right.
What's wrong with my swing? And, my advice, and I know you agree with this and talk about this, is you got to go back to what are you seeing and how well are you seeing the ball? And are you picking it up early? Are you seeing it as long as you're possible? Are you recognizing spin? And if you're not, we got to find a better way how to do it.
Well, that's one of the first questions that I ask when guys say I'm having to. That's the first one. They says, "How are you seeing the ball? What's going on there?" And usually you'll see the eyes kind of go to the top of the head where the guys start to they're thinking now, and then all of a sudden they realize, yeah, well, I'm not seeing the ball as well as I was before. So from there, you start going backwards from that point to see how they're resting. See what's going on with them from a mental state, the things that are thinking, which led to another thing that we did is called sports track, that something that was able to measure just those things, how much rest they were getting, whether they're on any medications, uh, how their diets were, how the eating habits and everything too, that all have an effect on your ability to perform. And that includes seeing the baseball, but it still comes down to, regardless, you have to be able to recognize that pitch in that first third to make a good decision in that second third and then react.
Yeah. It's funny, Reggie, you bring up all this nutrition and sleep, and those are things you were looking at back in the day. And today it's like this big news, and partially because we have all this great tracking information. We got these sleep trackers, we got these nutrition trackers, and all the data to kind of go behind it. But this is stuff athletes were doing, some of the best. We're understanding that sleep, the nutrition, and all that played such a huge role in performance.
Well,
but it's hard to manage.
Well, it was. It was through trial and error. You had to learn how and what made you to be able to perform at a higher level. Guys are really fortunate today that the information that they have access to should help them to perform for extended periods in their careers as well as it did up. Because I think if you look at the average of the players that played during my era, many of them played 15, 20 years.
Yeah. Now, I may be a little biased in this, and I think you might agree to this, is almost that the new technology has made players lazier because they haven't had to really think about it themselves. They just rely on the data and go, okay, I'm not sleep well, instead of trying to figure out, okay, what's going on here? How do I manage myself to be a little bit better?
Well, without sounding like one of those old timers that are against analytics and the data that's driving the game right now, I wholeheartedly agree that players have gotten a little lazy. They don't have to think anymore. The information is provided to them, and that was one of the things. Especially, I believe in anything that we do well, especially athletically. Ted Williams used to say, "Hey, you got to dig it out of the dirt," and that means these are things that you go through practice and repetition and learn yourself. And exactly what that is, you learning about yourself through the repetitions and you doing the work and taking any information that you have and comparing it based on what you're doing yourself and what's being provided to you through others. So players being lazy, yeah,
And I,
They
I
provide
think,
it.
Reggie, and you used the word thinking, and it is correct. And I'm going to change the word a little bit. And this has to do with the laziness. It's visual thinking. It's visualization, how we visually picture the things we need to do. And, I know some buddies of mine that played, I know that, you and I conversation, you used to spend a lot of time picturing what you wanted to do and how you're going to go about it. And if you failed, or if you're struggling, you would picture, how do I get out of it? And, I think people use the word visualization today, but they don't really understand what visualization means. And when we talk about visualization, it's really about the eyes, not just a thought process. It's picturing how we want to go about doing something, not picturing the negativity, but picturing the positivity of how we want to approach this game.
I think, one of the things that's been added to the tools that the players can use, and that's through medical staff, because a lot of the sports psychologists and people, that's one of the things that they have players do, visualize what it is that they're about to do, because the kinds of responses that it triggers within the brain to control the body, and that visualization through the eyes, again, knowing that if you can see it and the eyes are working, the understanding is really that the eyes are nothing more than windows. It's the brain that's seeing and interpreting the information. And talking about it, just think about this: at a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, that process from the time the ball is released to contact is about a fifth of a second. And that was something I learned from your dad, that and later on through the Jules Stein Institute, that they were able to support that and improve it. That it's about 0.42 of a second. Yeah. And that lowers even exponentially the faster the ball's coming. So to be able to process that information and see the ball and see yourself being able to make contact at the proper place and space is critical.
Yeah, and you look at it, it's really an amazing feat, to be honest with you. And this is what always excites me, is even as much as I know and as much as I've learned over my 20 years, and really more because I was born with my dad talking to my ear, but it's always trying to figure out, how can we do this better? How can we make better decisions? How can we process things better? And, I hear this on the internet. I hear this on Twitter. I hear this, when I'm out with the team, they all start trying to talk about the body to be able to do that. And it's like, well, wait a minute, it's the brain that's controlling everything. It's the eyes that are taking the information to the brain. So we got to figure out, how do we simplify, how do we clean up that pathway from the eyes to the brain to the body, not trying to fix the body first. We got to fix the signals first.
Well, that's what you can, I call it GIGO, and garbage in, garbage out. You got to be able to sweep the trash and into the corners and clean it out, and clean up the brain, how and what it is that you want to do, so that the body can work and function based on the signals and the information that the brain is sending.
Yeah, and the system is fast. It is fast as can be. And what gets in the way is really all this garbage. And it's really a lot of garbage that's, maybe a little garbage, maybe a lot of garbage, whether it's fatigue, like we talked about, whether it's nutrition, whether it's coaches yelling at me, whether it's focused on my body, all that kind of garbage just slows the process down. So, I guess in a way, I'm really a garbage collector or a disintegrator, I guess. I don't know, trying to get rid of everyone's garbage so that they can process things quicker.
Well, you're doing a great job of it, Ryan, and certainly the key is understanding. And when I use the term understanding, that means when you're standing under something, you're supporting it. And I support everything that you're saying because I understand it. Yeah. Trust me, if I didn't, I'd simply say, I know what you mean.
No, we've had some good conversations, Reggie. Right. And let's going back a little bit on the history and going back to your time with the Dodgers. And you had it was a pretty stacked team. And, you can put some of those players in there, but I think Karros was there. I believe, at the time.
Eric Karros?
Yeah, Eric
Yes.
Karros was there, and Piazza possibly, was he there too at the time?
I had 4 guys that were consecutive rookies of the year in a row. That was Piazza, Karros, Mondesi, and Todd Hollingsworth. And those guys went through that time, excuse me, the Dodgers system when I came in there and started implementing the eye study.
Mm-hmm.
And excuse me, I'm choking here a little bit.
Yep.
They were able to identify strengths and weaknesses through their ability to see the ball, their ability to function and move and execute how their bodies wanted to do things. And they paid attention. They paid attention, and it showed up later on when they got to the big leagues.
So, expanding upon that, did you saw a difference between certain players that really bought in and really put in the work that versus players who did not or did not think they needed it?
Well, that the one thing that we did see, the guys that were willing to do the work moved. They moved up. That was our whole goal, to get players to the big leagues. So for the most part, every player wanted to improve. So when I would have the little sessions where they had to go through to work on the vectogram, and they had to work on the things that helped them improve their hand-eye coordination, all of those things, and then take that to the batting cages, they didn't have too many guys that did not want to do it. They just wanted to do it their own ways. But there again, when you have talent and exceptional talent, those guys certainly went further beyond, and that was the equalizer as far as being able to separate players that were going to play at the major league level and excel, and those that were going to be minor league players. And one of the things in the testing, we were able to pretty much identify the players that had major league eyesight and the players that had minor league eyesight.
Yeah. And you kind of made a comment they each had their own plan, and that's one of the keys, I think, to a visual plan and implementation is it's not a one system fits all. You have to mold it, manipulate it. There are some skill sets that work with each guy, but you mold it to that player. But at the same time, you as a hitting coach buying into the system, back with my dad, and we'll bring up Sid Thrift as part of that as well. You really believed in it. You got into it, and that was powerful. That for all the coaches that are listening, or the parents, is they need to buy in, and they need to help their players and their kids buy into it, because it's an important part to the system.
Well, one of the first things, the buy-in was an easy thing to do, because it made sense. And usually things that are based in common sense, you'll start to see. So using that as a method to help to recognize talent, you had to look at something that you said that is very key, that each person is an individual. They are unique unto themselves and how they process information. That's why there's no one system, no one style that's going to work exactly the same for everyone. That's difficult in itself, because even considering the fact that there are 3 different body types, and how we process information and how quickly we process that information, it's all different, and it's incumbent and being responsible as an instructor and as a teacher, that you pay attention to these things. You learn how that person moves. And how they react to things, how they're processing information. And it starts again with asking that question: how are you seeing? How's your eyesight?
Yeah.
How's your vision? Because if you can't see the ball, I guess if you swing enough, you'll make contact at some point.
You get lucky every once in a while, right?
Yeah.
Reggie, I don't know. I may have told you this story one time, but I had a player one time in a minor league that I was working with, and he goes, "I'm seeing the ball really good. I'm just swinging at bad pitches." And I said, he obviously doesn't understand what it means to see the ball really well.
Yeah. And certainly swinging at bat, I think of the old joke that Yogi Berra said. They said he was a good bad ball hitter. He said, yeah, but they look good to me. So the object is you still have to put the fat part of that bat on the ball.
And you take guys like, obviously the one that people talk about a lot is Vladimir Guerrero. His eye-hand coordination was phenomenal. His decision-making may not have been great,
exactly.
but he knew what he could hit. He had his decision-making process was phenomenal to him, just not to everyone else. And
something I saw him do. I saw it, and it wasn't once, twice that he did it. We were in Montreal, in the old Montreal ballpark there, Olympic Stadium, and Chan Ho Park threw him a slider that bounced in front of home plate, and he hit it over the 406 sign in center field. It looked like someone hit a 2-iron. And I wanted to make sure that everyone saw it. I said, "Did you guys see what I just saw there?" I said, "Did that ball bounce?" And he said, "Yeah." And then he did it again. And later on in the series on television, 30-30, they showed that he practiced that as a kid. There was a game that they played that you had to throw the ball and you had to hit it no matter where it was pitched and what. And it was a matter that he would hit baseballs or in an object that bounced. And so he had practiced that. So he had tremendous hand-eye coordination. And like you said, did he make the best decisions? No, but once he did, it was something he could do. Yeah, he was successful and wound up being a 300 lifetime hitter.
I think that goes back to even more Latin players do this, and you probably have. I know you've seen this quite a bit, but it's really to aim small, miss small in practice. And I think today's day, where people can't get onto the fields, they can't do all these things. This is a great time to work on their eye-hand coordination, whether it's hitting BBs or hitting max BP wiffle balls going high velocity, or hitting balls bouncing and throwing, and just changing the dynamics and letting the player, hey, figure out what do I need to do to make contact and be successful with this.
Well, one of the things that I found in my studies, in making my own notes and observations, and this is by no means that I want to demean or denigrate any particular group or ethnic group in anything. One of the things that I found is that players from the Dominican Republic had trouble recognizing pitches. And the pitch that they had the most trouble recognizing was the curveball. So in some of my testing and some of the things that I did, I had this machine that would flash a picture. It would flash numbers and words. It kissed the scope, yes. And up, and you could do it at a 10th of a second. You could take a 25th down to 100th of a second, and flash up columns of numbers, words, and ultimately a hand with a baseball in it that would show a particular type of pitch just from the position that the hand was in. And most of the Latin players only saw fastball. Yeah. They had trouble recognizing the breaking ball, and later on in continuing to use this and having them identify numbers and words, it came down to, because many of them did not go much beyond the 3rd grade, that they never learned to read. Mm-hmm. So I, from a cause and effect standpoint, I attributed the cause for them not recognizing was not seeing in the brain not processing words, the things that and what those words and what those letters and things meant. So that led the Dodgers to have and develop their classes for the Latin players, where they learn to read and and these types of things. And it solved a lot of problems, because all of a sudden they could see the difference in the hand position of a fastball or curveball, even the slight variances of the hand to recognize sliders, knuckleballs, changeups, and so forth. So it's something that really helped get a better understanding of players in how important vision was, and their ability to see is the things that were necessary for them
Yeah,
to
it's a good
learn
point,
to be able
Reggie.
to
You
do.
know, I think about, you know, as you're telling that, I was thinking about some of the players I've been around, the Latin players, and there's some guys that have phenomenal vision, but there's a lot of Latin players that don't. And this happens, you know, in all different nationalities and all kids. Sometimes a young kid doesn't have good clarity of vision, doesn't recognize things, and he struggles because he's got a vision issue. But at the same time, I have found, you know, or backtracking a little bit, that Latin players, you're right, they tend to struggle with early recognition, but their eye-hand coordination is so good that they can catch up to this. Where you have sometimes with different people is the opposite side, is their early recognition is really good, but their eye-hand coordination is just so-so on there.
But again, you know, reaction is a brain function, so it's not something that you can teach. You can help them develop it, what they have, but it's not something that you can teach.
Yeah, it's kind of more like you have this engine, and we want to divert the resources to make it run cleaner and better than maybe it was, because it was distracted by something else. And the more we streamline that process, you know, things seem to be, we're just getting more information to make better decisions.
Well, the better the information is, I think you also that will contribute to you making better decisions.
Yeah. Now, you know, Reggie, you know, you and I have been around quite a few players from youth to professional level. Why do you think more guys don't spend more time with a visual emphasis or training their eyes to be more, to work better?
Because it's something that's just assumed that because you're out there playing that you have the vision. And that was one of the things that, you know, I didn't want to do. I didn't want to leave anything out in knowing and how important vision was, because it's something that Ted Williams would talk about when as a young player. But that the whole emphasis is on mechanics now, especially, you know, launch angle, exit velocity, you know, hand speed, bat speed, bat angles, vertical versus, you know, what have you. They're spending more time on mechanics rather than being able to get these kids to know how well they're seeing the ball. You know, the better they see the ball, the better information that the brain receives, so that they can make better decisions and be more accurate in their ability to place the fat part of the bat on the ball.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the problems is the wording, and you're not going to change, but vision. And people, like you said, they think they have it or they don't, and they get mixed up that vision is different than eyesight. Eyesight is the ability to see letters on a board. That's clarity, being 2010, 2015, 20, whatever, you know, you are. And eyesight's obviously important, but vision is how you use that eyes to be able to do what we're talking about.
It encompasses all of the things, vision of space and time.
Yeah.
Your ability to place an object, put an object in a point in time and space to hit another object.
Yeah.
So that's all part of the vision. Now the just to show you how the difference in the effect of the two, in that last third, the ball coming to the plate. You have recognition, you have decision, and you have reaction. In that last third, one of the things that I do, and sometimes I make a point to have improved in my students, when I start my swing, I can close my eyes because the brain has already processed where the timing and when I need to start my swing, and the space at ultimately where the ball is going to end up for me to get the barrel there. Because what we were able to prove at that point, you no longer see the ball. And one of the studies that came out that the average major league hitter loses the ball about 21 feet out in front of home plate. He no longer sees it. That the number of arcs of light that would be necessary to see it all the way down to contact, we just not humanly possible to see that. So this is where we are. So to get back, eyesight and vision are two separate things.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit to you is the brain, the visual part of the brain still sees, and it sees that last part based off projection. So your eyes, they may be taking a little bit of information, some guys a little bit more than others, but it's really how your brain projects the information that it's already received to allow it to know where it is. And if you don't have any experiences or if you've never practiced things, your projection can be thrown off. So even like younger kids, they need to spend more time tracking as long as they can, because over experience, it's a lot easier to shorten that need as you get older and you have all that great experience built into the brain.
That's one of the drills that I use with them. I throw the ball and have them catch it at the point in space where they need to hit it. So if it's away,
and you're developing their visual information. You're developing their visual accuracy of where that something is in space, and they'll miss. Like you probably see a few miss every once in a while, but they start getting better because the practice and they start putting the pieces of the puzzle together.
You're correct, and where and another to add to that challenge, I'll put a number on a baseball, and sometimes I go 1 through 6. And I'll put different styles of numbers, because what can happen, say for instance, if I make a 4 and keep the 4 connected, if it can look like a 6.
Mm-hmm.
I can do the same thing with a 3 and a 5, depending on how I make that 3. If I may use straight lines and then a curve on a 3, that number would look like a 5. So in the process of doing it, I take the ball and I hold it behind me, cover the number, and then toss it to them with the ball spinning forward in the breaking ball fashion, and ask them to call the number in the air, but they have to catch it as well.
Yeah.
So two things are going on. They get to the point to where they actually see the number and call it and catch it at the same time where they need to. And probably one of the best that I've ever had doing. They actually thought you had to look behind and see that someone wasn't giving
the numbers.
The numbers. It was a little girl that had come over from Saudi Arabia. Her parents' dad worked in the oil fields there, and I had been over there to work with the Saudi Arabian Little League team there, but. She was calling the ball. It seemed like it was no more than, say, 3 to 4 feet out of my hand.
Yeah.
And being that accurate with it, and she wound up being a pretty good hitter too at the same time. So there's little things like that help the tracking and where they need to hit the ball in place. So it accomplished two things there.
Yeah, and you know what you're doing, and you know this, but this is really for everyone listening. You are making their visual attention rise. Their eyes are the major sensory, and by having them focus on something and try to process something, they're intensifying, they're putting their power in there, and they can't think about mechanics, they can't think about any of this other stuff. And the more fine-tuned their vision gets in, the more narrow focus they get in, they're taking in that information and they're learning from that. And some players, as you know, in the big leagues, can do that phenomenally. I mean, obviously, you know, Barry Bonds was phenomenal at picking that ball up early. There are guys, you know, Jason Giambi too was really good at picking the ball up early. And there are some guys who don't do it very good, but you know, I think you'd want to have that. You know?
Well, yeah, you would. And one of the things that I found that the brain functions better and processes information, especially things we want to do, if it has a specific task.
Yep.
So that focus and that concentration there is better rather than it's a general task. A general task like you said, well, throw the ball or hit the ball. But if I say to you, hit this ball to right field, that's a specific task. And now all of the other things that the brain has been trying to process, it puts it aside and focuses in, and you have that narrow focus and concentration to be able to achieve that specific task.
Yeah, I love that because you know, I see it. It drives me nuts, and I know it drives you nuts too. Is so many drills or things that people are doing. Their focus is so untask oriented that they're just, whether it's a tee work, they're just going up and swing hit, swing hit, swing hit, instead of what am I trying to do? What's my task? What do I need to see? Where do I need to direct my attention to?
It's about purposeful practice. You have to have a purpose to achieve a goal. And what I mean by that, what your purpose is, say for instance, I give you a ladder, or either I ask you, what is the purpose of a ladder? Many people will say, well, it's to climb up and get what I want. So I'll ask the question, well, what if what you want is in a hole? And what if what you want is there's a chasm between you and where you want to go, and you lay this ladder down? I said, what does the ladder become then? Well, they say it becomes a bridge. Yes. So what is the purpose of a ladder? Is to get you where you want to go. And where you want to go and what you want to achieve is your goal. So that's why when you practice with a purpose and have something in mind that you want to achieve out of that session and every swing that you're taking. Even if it's right down to, sometimes what I'll do, I'll put a ball on the tee and say, look at this seam right here. I want you to hit that seam. That's how purposeful and specific that practice is, and you'll see a much better result just that much faster.
Yeah, that it's, you know, again, we could talk forever and you get me excited. And I love that all the things you're saying is, you know, I always ask them, what's the most important thing when you're playing baseball? And they're like, I don't know. You know, they give me all these weird answers. I'm like, how about the ball? You know,
Yeah.
We got to focus on this ball. And then let's aim smaller. Let's look for that seam. Let's look for the scratch mark. Let's look for something smaller, not just a whole ball, but if we aim small, we miss small kind of situation.
One of the things that I failed to mention about drills in specific, drills should have a specific purpose in mind. Don't do drills just for the sake of doing a drill, because
Just to work.
yeah, well, yes, it really is one, because the drill that you provide should be specific to that person and the problem that he may be having to correct it. Because if you have people doing all the same drills that are not specific to a problem, you can create a problem.
Yeah.
So that's just as a warning to keep that in mind, that drills should be specific to certain kinds of problems that players have.
Yeah. Now I'm going to go back on another thing you said, and this is going to be gold for any players or coaches that are listening to. And you and I discussed this about your eyes closed. And, you know, one of the things that I do, and I know you do this too, is close-eyed tee drill. Hitting balls off the tee with your eyes closed. Now, as you know, the fear sets in. Everyone's afraid. They start feeling what their swing does, and they're working on their arc angle and stride and all those things. But if they can have a clear picture of the ball with their eyes closed, and they have that seam like you're talking about, it's almost like their eyes are open, but they're purpose driven, and it's like driving the hammer to the nail. They're fine tuned on it. Their body will naturally what they've trained to react and hit that really well if they have a nice clear picture of what they're looking at.
This is one of the drills that I like to use, especially for players that move a lot. And also in the lab, we found if your head moves laterally along the coronal plane more than 4 inches, your vision is compromised. And what we found that if your vision is 20/20 and you move more than 4 inches laterally on the coronal plane or in the sagittal plane, your vision gets compromised to the point that your vision goes to 2200. And by the way, 20/20 isn't good enough to play at the higher levels of the game. So just to mention that, but it goes to 2200.
Yeah.
And I like to tell the kids, they say, what you do when your vision is at 2200, they give you a white stick with a red tip on the end of it because they say you're legally blind. But what I do, that when I said, okay, I'm going to put this ball here, I want you to close your eyes, visually see the ball, you know where it is, and I want you to hit it. The one thing that I see is that they don't move their heads. They stay perfectly still, they take their strides, but their head doesn't move.
Yeah.
And then when they wind up hitting the ball, they immediately, they want to see where it went. I said, so now we're going to do the same thing. Keep your eyes closed, but tell me where you hit the ball and whether it was on the ground, in the air, or on a line. So those are specific tasks, and they surprise themselves when they see that they do that. And ultimately what I'll do, I'll put 2 balls in different locations on the tee and show them that they're capable of hitting both baseballs.
Yeah, and part of what you're saying there, and is to add to it, is they know where the ball goes by feel of how it comes off the bat. They
Yes.
don't need to look where it goes. That's what I always talk about is, why are you looking where it goes? Well, I need to know if I need to run or not. Well, no, if you hit the ball, you're running first. You see when the ball's going, you know. And there's so many, like I feel like I can correct so many visual issues if they can stay focused through contact than letting their eyes fly open, especially with what we see today on the internet is all this, coming across.
Now that's a mechanical issue. when you see the head flying, and usually it's something I'm going to say this and might be somewhat controversial.
Well, no, actually, I want to tee you up for this, Reggie. Okay. Because I think this will add to it. See, as you know, I'm a vision guy. I understand the vision. I understand a little bit. I've been around all these other people, but this is my lane. I don't need to get in all these other lanes. But vision can be affected by the mechanics, and it can be affected by the setup. It can be affected by other things that affect the vision. So they all work together. I know that's where you want to go, is talk about how those kind of work together or against each other.
Well, first of all, your vision can be affected by you being in or out of balance. If you're out of balance, your vision gets compromised, and the precision of where you're able to place that bat and do the things that's required, especially in most ballistic sports. If any part of that gets compromised, you're not going to be as accurate with that. So
perfect example is police officers. When they're still, they can hit the target every time, but as soon as they got to move, that's a new game.
Well, the inner ear gets affected in the movement. So again, where things are in space, any extraneous movement compromises your vision. And again, being in balance is critical. And there are things that I use to teach the ideal setup, and something that you can look up in golf for golfers. Dr. David Wright, who initiated this study at the Curlin Jobe Institute there. Doc is a golf teacher, and we were brought together by another doctor who said that we were working on the same thing, coming from different directions. But that was the one thing that what affected vision and what affected your ability to make good, accurate decisions with what your body was doing in the position that you started in. And that, as I was saying, that about being able to hit an object with your eyes closed, and do these things through feel. The feel itself was what I saw in the calculation that was made in being able to stay as still as possible, and execute the movement. And it's something that you'll see in a gyroscope, for instance. And what starts to happen, that if you spun a gyroscope, as long as if everything were perfectly balanced, it would continue to spin without stopping. But because it's not perfectly balanced, when it starts to slow down, it starts wobbling.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately what will happen, it'll just fall over. Well, these are some of the same challenges that the body experiences when you're trying to hit a baseball. That any movement from any preset position that you're in, which is your athletic position, which is your stance, which is your posture in that stance, if that changes, it creates problems, and you'll see a wobble. And that's not something you want to be doing when you're swinging and trying to hit a baseball coming in at 90, 95 miles an hour. You want to be as precise as possible, and you can do that. The smaller the movements that you make,
Yeah.
the more efficient and effective you can be.
Yeah, there's definitely, I mean, we could talk about this subject probably for a couple hours alone. You know, even outside of baseball, whether you're, even as a fielder, pitcher, but, other sports, balance and vision are such a huge thing. And at the same time, just to bring this up too, is concussions. Concussions affect the balance, but also affect the vision. And we see it a lot more in catchers, because it's a position they're doing a lot of tracking and recognition, whether they're defensively or offensively. But you'll see a lot of catchers that have effect because their balance, not just their balance, but something's thrown off, whether their eyes or inner ear, stiff neck, current nerve pathways, whatever it is that affect them to be able to see. And even, we talk about sleeping on a bad pillow. You have a neck cramp that will throw your whole thing into a frizzy as well.
Well, again, you're out of balance, and the things that are affected by that, I can't stress it enough. You go through all of the other things that it's what I check. I check for setup. There are measurements, and ultimately, when we get together here, there are some specific measurements that are taken, that each individual is unique, and he has his own unique balance points that are within his body type of the three bodies, in the endomorphic, mesomorphic, and ectomorphic, that how their body moves, and the things that they can achieve. And one of the things that it found, that when you're out of balance, regardless of what body type, there's tension. There's a restriction that occurs in some part of the body, and now you're trying to compensate. So you might have an accurate swing one time, and then the next time on the ball in the same location, you miss it. And it's probably gone from you being out of balance, and the effect that it had on your ability to make the correct and accurate decision of being able to put the bat in that particular point in space on time.
Yeah, and for anyone who ever gets a chance to be around Reggie will show you how he can get you in and out of balance, and you'll see how strong Reggie still is, which is phenomenal to watch on there. But it's a pretty cool drill. But hey, Reggie, like I said, we can go forever. I'm going to answer some questions. Some people popped into my chat room, and then we'll kind of wrap some things up. And one of them was, what was the toughest type of pitch to pick up and see for you?
The slider, because the difference in some of the sliders that are thrown today and what we saw more of today, you see more slurs. That's a part curveball, part slider. The pitch that Mariano Rivera really perfected was with that cutter. That's what the true slider was, and it was up because it looked like a fastball coming in there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you get that late break, especially in at that point just after decision, and you need to react. It put a premium on you being able to recognize these pitches a little bit sooner. But that was, if there was any pitch that bothered me, was that real tight cutter slider pitch there. Where do I hit it? And most of the time I'd be early on and I'd pull it foul.
Yeah, sometimes you probably need to have a different visual approach that may not be your standard approach, but like someone like Rivera, you need to do your damnest to see it as long as physically, mentally possible. It may not be as long as you want, but as long as possible to give you as much chance as possible.
One of the things that I would say I would probably do against him, I'd cheat. I'd look for it. I'd open up, because I would figure there's probably about a 95% chance that that's what it was going to do. So I would maybe open up to start my swing a little bit sooner.
Yeah. Now, shoot, you got me on that one, because now I'm going to say something. But some players don't want to change. They got to do everything the same way,
Well, then
good luck to them.
Doesn't that explain insanity?
Yes, it does.
Doing the same thing over and over again the same way and expecting a different result.
Yeah, it's a different task, not a different task, but a different problem, and we're pushing the same solving it the same way instead of trying to figure out how to solve it better.
Well, rather than using the word change, sometimes I say adjust or repurpose.
I love adjust. I think adjust is a great word. Even to add on to that a little bit, someone had asked about, what are some of the things maybe you would change now because you've learned a little bit more, but maybe things you did, and we kind of talked about this at the beginning. What would you do to pick up the ball early? What were some of the things, some of your tricks or ways that you would share with people?
Well, one of the things that I learned, that there's a drill that I have the kids do in learning early recognition, and to help them improve their visual systems overall, which includes the mental part of it. I would hold my hand and explain something that your dad explained to me that's called eye switch. And what that is you said you pick up an object, sometimes you look at the bill of the cap or look at a sign in the outfield, but more importantly, when you're on the on-deck circle or you're preparing, watch where the pitcher's release point is. And what it would do, what worked best for me, I would look sometimes at the chest, or I'd look down low where the hands start. And then just as he starts to come forward, I would let my eyes shift, just my eyes shift to the release point. And what that allows you to do, it allows the brain to momentarily clear itself, and you see with finer focus in that sense, rather than trying to stay in fine focus in one point. Because what starts to happen then, there's an after image that occurs if you stay in fine focus too long, because the brain wants to do something else. So what I do with my players,
we call it hard focus.
Hard focus, yes. What I do with them is I say, okay, when I say shift, I want you guys to look at my cap. And when I say shift, I want you to shift.
Fine focus to the release point.
Yes, just let your eyes go right to where my hand is, and I would hold my hand up there. Then I'd drop it and said, okay, shift, and I'd raise my hand, and I'd put up either 1, 2, 3, 4 fingers or what have you, and ask how many fingers did they see. And then what I would do, I would ask, say, what pitch did I just throw? And I'd put my hand in this position like this, real quick like that, and they say curveball. I said, yes. I said, because you can't throw a fastball like that. So those are the two things, the two important things that you look for. A fastball will have rotation spin that's going backwards or back towards the pitcher. Any type of breaking pitch, whether it's a slider, curveball, will have forward rotation on the ball. So just that information and just sharing that with them. I have kids that are 5 years old that can tell the difference between a fastball and a curveball now, because they have learned to see the hand, and that, and part of seeing that anticipation that comes, that the ball is going to start spinning forward, and they actually start to see that.
You know, Reggie, I don't want to keep going longer, but, you know, again, you get me excited. And I asked this to players, and I think you and I talked about this before, whether it's a pro guy or a little league guy, but, you know, softball, whatever it is, I will get on the mound and say, where are you looking? And they look at me and go, oh, I think I'm looking at his glove. Okay, well, now where are you looking? You know, I start my mode, where are you looking? Well, I think I'm looking here. Well, okay, here. Well, I'm just trying to get to the release point. And, well, where's my release point? Well, it should be, well, I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm looking at, you know, and that's the thing, is most of them don't have that visual strategy, whether what you're talking about or any other kind of strategy. But I agree with what yours is, and it's going to modify by who's pitching and the different, you know, lefty, righty, all these different things. But these players, if they can have a visual strategy, whether they're picking up spin, like you talk about, or they're picking up fingers, or they're picking up wrist, or they're picking up body, you know, rise and drop, you know, they may all have different kind of ways to help themselves be better, but most of them don't have that strategy to be even close to being good.
Well, you develop the strategy. They have the tools necessary to be able to see those things now, especially with all the video work that's being done. But like William said, to become a good hitter, you have to have a plan. Number one, a good plan. 2, get a good ball to hit. And 3, be quick with the bat. Those 3 things right there. And if you locking on that, number 1, having a good plan. 2, get a good ball to hit, and that requires you to see the ball and to make good decisions, to make good reactions on that. So it can't stress it enough.
Yeah. Now, Reggie, this question is a little bit of a setup question, not from me, and I can answer it. You can answer it. We all, but it's, what's your opinion on launch angle? Should you try to swing up like some hitting gurus are trying to teach? So,
yeah. Well,
we can simplify that answer if you like.
launch angle is something that I've been teaching all along. It's interesting how it's come back around to that, because I used to get in trouble. They said, well, you're teaching everybody to hit the ball in the air, and you get enough of those pop-ups to shortstop and second base, then you're going to want them to hit the ball on the ground. Well, it doesn't make any sense, first of all, because the object is I want to get the bat into the path of the ball in there as soon as I possibly can. Now, launch angle. Let's talk about launch angle. Yeah, you need to hit a line drive. There has to be an angle that's going to create that. So now a pitcher stands in a mound, and as tall as pitchers are today, that ball is going to be released somewhere between 14 and 8 and 14 degrees above you. But when it crosses home plate, the average is about 6 degrees. So if I can create a swing path that's going to match that, then now I'm using physics. Then physics states that the longer 2 objects share the same path, coming from opposite directions, the greater the opportunity there is for a head-on collision. So that's what I want to create, is that head-on collision. Now, how do I do that? It becomes just that much more difficult if I'm standing vertical, which I'm hearing see a lot of instructors, well, stand tall, stay straight up. So that means that the lower that pitches, the more vertical the angle of the bat has to be on to make contact with the ball, which isn't very effective and very efficient if I can maintain my posture. Mm-hmm. My athletic position, that is with the knees slightly bent and a slightly forward tilt of your upper body, and maintain that posture. What I found is that most hitters, their athletic position is going to fall somewhere between 140 degrees and 160 degrees of angle. So that tells me there's a pretty good chance that just by maintaining my posture and the ball coming in from the pitcher's mound to the catcher because he's squatting, I have a pretty good chance of getting the bat on plane just by maintaining my posture.
Yeah.
So when the back elbow drops in, the bat flattens out, that puts me on plane with that ball just that much sooner, rather than trying to hit down and across the path of the ball, which physics says that if you do that, the amount of force that is applied when you cut across the angle of it gets split by the degree of angles. So I don't want that. I want to create that head-on collision and the bat staying in the path of the ball and on plane. I've created my launch angle. So now if I get it to 20 degrees and above, 20 to 30 degrees, there's a pretty good chance the ball is going to be in the air. In fact, I know it is. Now it depends on how fast the bat is moving. Mass times acceleration equals force, the amount of force that applied. At that point, the bat speed is important. The ball has a chance of going over the fence because it's going to travel farther. Now there's your science, there's the angles, there's your geometry, there's your physics. It's all involved in that. And it's about maintaining your posture in a nutshell, and that helps your launch angle.
Yeah, and I think, Reggie, obviously, this is a long conversation, but every ball's got some kind of angle down or upwards. But I think the word itself is gotten so construed out there, and some people are going, well, I teach launch, and you're like, well, wait a minute, what do you mean you're teaching? And it's like you said, should you try to swing up? Try and swing up, and swinging up creates so many other issues. And we go back to being visual, that maybe their visual accuracy might need to change. Maybe they need to look underneath the ball. Maybe they need to aim higher. Maybe it's not their swing, it's what they're seeing and what they're processing, which is causing problems too.
Well, what that brings to mind is now that pitchers, because of throwing with the little higher velocities, they're throwing and pitching more to the top of the strike zone. Well, that goes back to something that Ted Williams taught us years ago, that even though your swing is still going to be slightly upwards, says what you have to do on those high pitches, you have to adjust your sights more to the top of the baseball, because what that will do, that'll help get you on plane of that pitch just that much sooner, to be able to make good solid contact with it, and more importantly, in understanding that anytime that ball is up in the zone, you have to hit it more out in front. Even though you see it better, you don't have as much time as you do on the ball that's down in the zone. You have, because you can actually see that ball longer than you can the ball up, and especially as it relates to your ability to react to it, because that's what you. So yes, you adjust your sights on different types of pitches. That high fastball to help you adjust your sights more to the top of the ball.
It's a key word that you're using there, is adjust your sights, and that's in any sport, and especially we talk about it in shooting. If you're missing your target, you have to adjust your sights, right? So that's something that people don't think about in a tracking sport, is adjust your sights. Maybe it's, it might be a quick, easy fix to some of the other issues that are going on, because if you're focused on your uppercut or your lower cut or your hip angle, then you're not seeing the ball.
Well, we were talking about thinking earlier.
Yeah.
Old timers used to say to me, he said, if when you're in that batter's box, if you're thinking, you're stinking.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, Reggie, again, I think we need to teach a 4 to 6 hour course on this, because we can keep going on some of these things in battle. We've gone for quite a bit. I appreciate your time, Reggie. This has always been fun for me. Always fun to communicate with you and think about and battle some of the ideas to make players better. So anything that you have or suggest for players or coaches today that, in this downtime, any recommendations or anything you'd like to say to them?
Well, coaches, I say to you, if anything, look at the naturalness of what your players are doing. Spend time with them to understand how their body moves, understand cause and effect. Instead of coaching the effect of something, understand what caused it. Help them understand their balance and posture, and in an effort to eliminate those things that they're thinking about when they step in that batter's box. Trust your training, trust the information that's being provided, and trust the things that you've had them work on in their practice. And again, remember that natural is better. And unfortunately, you see a lot of the naturalness being coached out of kids. There is no one way to do something. There is no one technique that's going to work the same for everyone. Find out what works best for your student, and you'll see improvement exponentially, a lot faster and a lot longer lasting than changing and going from this style this month to this style the next.
Yeah, good stuff. And, you know, from my side, from the visual side, there's so many things they can be doing. It's a great time to work on visual skills, whether it's online visual skills or other stuff. You know, one of the things, and we talk about being natural, is, I got to get out of here, but you see the BP on a tripod kind of behind me over there. That's the high-speed wiffle ball machine. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why I like it, Reggie, is you got to be competitive. And you got to be natural, and you do see, you know, if you're hitting balls square, you know, if balls are getting up, you know what you're doing. But it's such a great natural competitiveness drill for guys to work on. So there are a lot of things you can work on. There's a lot of things I think we overwork on. You know, like we talked about earlier, this mindless hitting instead of having a purposeful access of whatever we're doing, whether it's fielding or hitting on there. So I appreciate you guys joining in. You know, I thank Max BP and NDV for allowing us to do this. If you guys have any questions or concerns, reach out to me. We have these 3 websites, maxbp.com, ndvperformance.com, where we have the online academy at ndvperformance.com. It's got all these videos that we've done, as well as other training, and also SlowTheGameDown.com, which is our original history of my dad and I and some of the teams and training that we do on there. So appreciate you guys' time and staying focused over our hour on there. And Reggie, this is awesome. I think we might have to do episode 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 coming soon on there.
Well, sounds good to me. Anytime.
Yeah, stay safe, Reggie, and hopefully we'll catch up pretty soon on there.
To all of you, stay safe. God bless.
Yeah, thanks, Reggie.